Welcome back, reefers, to the channel. In today's video, I'm going to tell you how I crashed this masterpiece. But let me explain. The last time you saw my reef, it looked like this. I had colonies the size of wiffle balls, and my sandbed was covered with even more colonies that I didn't quite know yet where to place. SC and I were launching a business, and we were also going to Reefapalooza Orlando to promote and check out some of our contacts and wholesalers in the area. The tank itself was in the very capable hands of the reef wife, and all was well. Little did I know that when I returned, things would be very different. This is what the tank looks like today. The first thing I noticed when I was really able to look at the tank the morning after was that one of my indicator corals had checked out, namely a green bird's nest that had been with me for almost a year and had completely checked out. Strange, but not alarming. I proceeded to do a full panel on my aquarium, and to my surprise, I saw that my alkalinity had creeped up to around 10.5 DKH. I always run my alkalinity around 8.5, so the creep up after around 7 days was not too alarming. But then I noticed why. You see, before my trip to Orlando, my Core 20's return pump power supply had died, and I was forced the same day a new J-Bow DCP pump the day before the trip to Orlando. During the pump swap, I turned off my carbon reactor to swap out the carbon, and after swapping the pumps, I turned everything back on. I made a critical mistake in that I had bumped my carbon doser's bubble rate higher than normal, and to make matters worse, the failsafe that I had built into the apex, which was to turn the carbon doser off if the pH inside dropped below 6.5, failed, because while turning on my carbon reactor, I also set the carbon doser to always on, negating the programming I had put in. This was bad. I immediately turned off the carbon doser and began the process of performing 30-gallon water changes every 2 days until my alk dropped back into the range of 8.5 to 9. During this time, the corals seemed fine, as were the fish and all the corals that I had brought back with me from Orlando. But then began the STN from the tips. A lot of my acros started showing signs of STN from the tips, and things only went downhill from there. But before making any changes, I sent out 2 ICP tests. Both tests came back with perfect parameters. It took almost 1 month of trying to save things and recover before I decided to bite the bullet and pull everything from the tank. I was angry and sad, but there's always a silver lining that I will get to later. Since I was pulling everything from the tank, I decided to make a few really big changes. I shut down my external refugium and went back to basics. I pulled out all of my live rock and all of my sand. I replaced the sand with Tropic Eden reef flakes and soaked and killed my live rock. I pressure washed all of it and let it all dry out in the sun before pressure washing it again and soaking it again. This was to kill off some turf algae and some aptasia that I had seen that were starting to become a nuisance. After all of this, I rebuilt the aquascape using Stonefix into something I am very proud of. Since the tank was still cycling, I took my time and spent a week of rebuilding the rockscape until I was happy. Placing all the rock back into the tank, I turned off the lights and let it cycle with copious amounts of Fritz Turbo Start, Brightwell Microbacter 7, and my Cryptic Refugium, which was untouched through all of these changes. I also took the opportunity to remove some fish that I felt were a little too big or aggressive and plan to replace them all with babies. All in all, I replaced 100% of the water in my tank with fresh new water using a different brand of salt. A change of this magnitude required a lot of salt and a lot of water, and frankly, Red Sea Blue Bucket was trying my patience with the salt to cost ratio. Even when owning a fish store, when the store uses one brand and your personal reef uses a different brand, it can get costly maintaining over 400 gallons of water volume. So I decided to switch to a different brand of salt that was cheaper and that showed great promise in the shop. This was Live Aquaria's Reef Pro Salt, which mixes up to the exact parameters that I like to keep. Since I was changing the salt, I decided to further reduce the cost of this reef by getting rid of my T5s and replacing over 400 watts of T5s with under 200 watts of Reef Bright 48-inch LED strips, further lowering my electricity bill. In case you're wondering, the blue of the Reef Brights are very different than those of the Radion and complement the Radion extremely well. I do not regret the purchase one bit. Since the Core 20's power supply had twice showed me how undependable it was, I purchased the Vectra L2 to replace the J-Bow and kept both pumps as plausible backups in case of failure. In that order, I also decided to switch out the Apex Wave power heads for Vortec MP40s, 6 of them to be exact. To increase my service agitation, I replaced my IceCap 3Ks with the new Max Spec 350s. Then, I did nothing. Since Reeferpalooza Orlando, all I have done are water changes, and instead I focused heavily on my Elos 120 build. It didn't set in that I had lost over $10,000 or $12,000 in acros until weeks later. Strangely, even though I was upset, I viewed the failure as my fault. I had become careless and lackadaisical, which don't mix well when keeping acros, but there was that silver lining I mentioned earlier. See, when I pulled all of the acros out of my tank, many were cut up and placed into the shop for sale and grow out. Ones that didn't make it into the shop had been shipped to my Reef Buddy in New Jersey for safekeeping. While I still lost around 40% of my acros, the pieces, around 200 to be exact, were flourishing in my friend's tank. Later this month, he will be making a special trip down here and bringing me back almost everything that I had lost, including some new things. Sure, there will be frags and mini colonies, but as I said before, I know how to grow acros, and it's just a matter of time before things get back to where they were. And this, my friends, is a silver lining that I had mentioned earlier. If it's one thing that this experience has taught me, is that these ecosystems that we attempt to recreate in our home are just as volatile as our oceans. A simple, small change can have devastating impacts to our little reefs just as they do in the ocean. It's important to remember that aquaculture is very, very important, and having a capable reef buddy that you can trust to hold copies of your prized collection invariably gives you a peace of mind when disasters like this happen. For the last few weeks, I've been placing various tester acros into the reef to ensure that it was ready, and they have been doing extremely well. I don't know what caused the crash, and I cannot pinpoint or blame any one thing, even after getting the parameters back in check. Throughout the crash, I did things slowly. I changed alk slowly, removed components slowly, and took my time examining everything. Ultimately, if I had to point blame, then I would say that it was a combination of an alk spike and possibly low nutrients that caused the crash. Unfortunately, this is not the update that you guys wanted to see, and it's certainly not the one I wanted to give. But I believe that part of this hobby is showing the successes and failures and owning up to your mistakes. I don't blame anyone except myself. Nonetheless, this experience also taught me that you need to have a contingency plan in place. And with that said, I always said that if you're going to do something right, then you go all out and balls to the wall. I waited until now to announce an upgrade to my hobby. Notice I said hobby, not tank. I will have more on this in an upcoming video very soon, but I can tell you this. The upgrade is called Project Moby. It consists of over 1,000 gallons, 13 tanks, 18 LED lights, and a 350 square foot room. And well, I think I've said too much already. But I wanted to give a special thanks to those of you sticking with me through this reefing journey, and I look forward to releasing more information about Project Moby. I look forward to bringing you guys some awesome content in the near future as well. If you enjoy my videos, consider hitting the subscribe button and dropping a comment below to keep up to date. As always, you guys keep doing what you do, and I'll catch you all on the flip side.